go. Here we go, 3, 2.
Today, just 1% of the planet falls within the so-called dirty livable hot zones. By 2050, the ratio could rise to almost 20%, leading to catastrophic consequences. As a result of globalization, greenhouse gases have increased due to energy demands, growing agriculture, and factory production around the world, which has contributed to climate change. With globalization causing an increase in economic activity and international trade, more greenhouse gas emissions have been produced. With the constant increase of greenhouse gas emissions, global temperatures will continue to rise, habitats will be lost, and food supplies will be disrupted. The Earth's average surface temperature since 1850 has risen over 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas are burned to generate electricity and power transportation and factories, which results in greenhouse gas emissions. The global average concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased about 50% since the Industrial Revolution. Other greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide have also shown increase, further contributing to the warming effect on Earth. Some additional examples include 20 million barrels of oil are burned each day, causing over 11,000 kilograms of CO2 to be produced each day. In 2024, the U.S. consumed an average of 90.3 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day. In 2023, 1.1 million tons of coal were burned each day on average, resulting in 2.6 million metric tons of CO2 being released into the atmosphere per day. My opponent will argue that countries can work together to fix the issue of gases and climate change. However, they are wrong, because there are many factors that prevent international collaboration on climate change, including economic burdens and national interests. Poor countries that already face economic challenges may not have the money to invest into climate change. National interest is another reason that countries wouldn't be able to work together to fight climate change, due to some countries prioritizing their own economic growth or energy demands. In all, globalization has caused an increase in energy demands, growing agriculture, and factory production around the world, which has contributed to climate change. Barack Obama once said, "We are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation to do something about it." Thank you.
Yep. 3, 2, go.
As said by the CEO of Canon Inc., Fujiyama Tadai, diversification and globalization are the keys to the future. Thanks to globalization, climate change can and will improve with international cooperation and increase towards greater amounts of energy and the improvement of international transportation. A lot of countries have begun to collaborate in order to combat climate change. Two examples of this being the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, which is hosted by the World Meteorological Organization, founded in 1988, and is responsible for assessing sciences relating to climate change for policymakers. And the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a treaty signed by 175 countries that is legally binding and promises to lessen the effects of climate change and global warming, including with other admirable goals such as ceasing poverty. There have been many reports of various efforts to make global energy clean, healthy, and sustainable. Many countries have begun to switch to the use of electric cars in order to combat the excessive greenhouse gas emissions that the transportation industry is responsible for, some of which includes Norway, Sweden, and even China. Not only this, but we've also begun to look for cleaner alternatives to fuel their cars, one of these alternatives being the many different kinds of biofuels, with some examples being algae, organic waste, and plant matter, of which are said to have a consumption of 244 million metric tons annually by 2030. While my opponent will attempt to argue that the CO2 emissions have been growing in size and intensity, further inspection shows the faults in their argument, even if they may seem true at face value. For example, many companies have begun to adopt greener practices in order to avoid excessive emissions, like Boeing, who's attempting to lower CO2 emissions by 50% by 2050 by recycling about 90% of their old plane parts, Samsung, whom have achieved 100% renewable energy in many of their factories in other countries, many other factories in Europe and other countries, and Microsoft, who's using pyrolysis, which is converting organic waste into green energy, in one of their Swedish factories. Globalization has been improving the overall standard of life all over through the sharing of technological, medical, and scientific discoveries. Society needs efficient energy and stronger medical practices in order to better serve the people who need them, like children and the elderly. And globalization gives us that no matter the cost. The benefits of globalization outweigh the consequences while also fixing set of consequences at the same time.
I would like to argue that there are also negative impacts to electric cars, and there are no major changes to these companies because the small impacts aren't big enough, and they're taking too long to make a impact. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Oh, the problems are irreversible as well. Irreversible. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and go.
You had said that that the companies and countries are taking too long to make the major change. However, many companies have been saying that they have a set time of which they plan to have everything done, which is 2050, which is which is, I believe, enough time to make a major change. It's a big enough time scale. Also, you mentioned that electric cars have a lot of negative effects, but you didn't specify what the effects were. So yeah, that's all I got.